now that you've heard all 5 of our presenters in the government as a process category give their rehearsed presentations, we're going to get them up here for a panel where we're going to take them out of their comfort zone a little and let you guys have a little crack at them, as well as our panel moderator, Brian Drake from Deloitte Consulting, who will come up and moderate a 20-minute panel discussion followed by a Q&A from you guys. So please welcome Brian to the stage.
Morning. Got some speakers coming up here. Emma, why don't you come on up? Get my technical standpoint. I'm Brian Drake. I'm with Deloitte Consulting. My claim to fame is I'm one of the founders of DWiki, which is our enterprise wiki. And I just want to share a couple of words and insights into what we've seen so far today. I feel like I work for one of the most collaborative companies in the world, and I feel that way because I've seen some pretty talented people come together and work on tough problems and then drive those down to very unique solutions for our client base. So I've had a lot of really positive days, and then there's times I have some pretty dark days. Like recently, I had this conference call, and we do a lot of conference calls. And it was on knowledge management, training, so on and so forth. How are we going to train our consultants for the future and so forth? And we started talking about, well, that's some great action items. Let's make that happen. So how are we going to get this word out to the rest of the corporation? And the leader of the call says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to send out an email to the people on this call only, no one else. We're going to encrypt that email. We're going to put a Microsoft Word document in there with track changes on. Now, when you make changes to the Microsoft document, make sure track changes is on, because if it's off, then I have to consolidate the comments, has to come on back, and then it's going to be a real hassle for me, so, just think about me. Okay, that's fine. So then I say, well, why don't we use DWiki? We can edit at the same time and everything will be fine. I don't know, this data is pretty sensitive. We got to train a lot of people. I'm not sure we want to tell a lot of people about our training program. And I thought, well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that we want to tell a lot of people about our training program because that's how you train people. Well, okay. Why don't we use an e-room, but we're going to have the e-room locked down to only the people on this phone call. I said, about that training idea, I think we want to train a lot of people and get the word out quickly. So why don't we work on that? Instead of closing off the information, let's share it. And then the leader of the call says, well, okay, we'll start a SharePoint site, but the membership of the SharePoint site can only be the people on this phone call. I mean, it's like the phone call is the holy grail. And we're in the private sector. We're not the government. The decisions we're making are not that consequential. But the people you see on this stage, the people you're going to see for the rest of today, they make consequential decisions about our lives, about the future of the future of the country. They keep our air clean. They protect us from threats abroad, and they help us obtain knowledge that we wouldn't normally have access to. So I consider these people heroes. I consider you all heroes. I mean that very seriously, and I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you very much. So with that, Peter, you gave us a really good example of citizen participation in government. And I thought it would be helpful for the audience to hear something about how did you inspire the public to participate in this forum versus the old mode of working in a town forum?
Well, the intent of our experiment was really to get the people that weren't actually participating already. So the standard channels, an op-ed or a town hall meeting, you get the same 200 people that would normally participate. What we did was use a couple of networking groups, specifically one called Santa Cruz Next and a couple others like Santa Cruz Geeks. We're local and we're small, so it's easy to touch all these people. Email lists, a couple of Facebook posts, really get it out and let it spread virally. And what we were able to get was a large cross-section of the people that don't normally participate, because for us, we're so close to Silicon Valley, a lot of people leave town at 7 in the morning and get home at 7, 8 at night. So they're not able to go to PTA meetings, they're not able to go to town hall meetings, but they were able to participate in the conversation this time, and I think they added greatly to it.
Thanks very much, Chris. I'd like to ask Emma a question. So Emma, in that same vein, how do you get participants, employees within NASA to participate inside of Spacebook? Do you have an incentive program of some sort?
We don't have an incentive program, but what we have are that what's in it for you that I talked about. Most commonly, we have a lot of ad hoc teams who get together, and they need tools to get their work done. So by offering them an easy way to do that, they don't have to fill out a form, they don't have to get permission, they can just go get their work done. In the same way, we have an equipment exchange forum, which is essentially a Craigslist for equipment. So if you want to be able to get rid of junk in your office or look for unused equipment to say, hey, does anybody have this cable or this whatever, you're giving them a reason to use it. They get free stuff, they get stuff out of their office, but it's participating and helping everybody else at the same time. So a lot of it is outreach.
Outstanding, outstanding. Tina, I've been on a few government contracts where the idea is we need a suggestion box for the director, the administrator, or the secretary. And those have mixed results. Sometimes they're highly successful, sometimes no one ever submits a suggestion. What makes Idea Factory different from any of those attempts in the past?
I think it's the fact that we allow the employees to also suggest ideas directly on the site. We don't filter them before they're posted. They can rate and comment on the ideas. So it really gives us a sense of what is important to the workforce, and it allows them to interact with each other and build a community. And we also use it as a way to communicate back to the workforce on where we are moving forward with certain ideas that they may not have known about, or things that we can't do. We try to tell them as much as possible as to why we can't move forward, so it's not just a thank you and goodbye.
Now, do people have a way to say, okay, so you said you can't do that program. Do people have a way to then say, well, I can address that problem, why we can't do it? Is that a function within it?
Sometimes the communication continues. We might post a reason why, and then somebody will say, well, what about this? And then we'll go back and respond back with further information to help clarify the issue.
Cool.
We really use it as a way to dispel myths and promote transparency.
That's right. Joan, one of the things you mentioned in your presentation is that the approach that you took to A-Space was that you wanted to start small, fail cheap, something that doesn't often happen in government, unfortunately. What lesson would you like to share with the audience here about that philosophy and that approach? Why did you choose that as opposed to another approach traditionally taken?
Well, because the fact is that we were exploring whole new territories, and in order to really be successful, we wanted to get something out really quick and get reactions from users. In fact, I think we had 3 versions of A-Space before we actually went live with it. The first one was a real dog. The second one got a little bit better, but wasn't right where we needed to. But within a year, we actually had something out, and we had something people can respond to. So actually the bigger challenge now is continuing that momentum as we grow and expand, because we're able to avoid a lot of the problems that we're going to accomplish if we started with this big vision that I talked about first and tried to build it all at one time, because there's huge bureaucratic and technological problems of making that happen. So by focusing it small, we could overcome some of the first obstacles and barriers. And then we can expand from that now. And as we expand, we continue to kind of address more systematically some of the issues that we have to deal with.
Chris, I have a similar question for you. What was your experience in the past with the DC government, and then how was your approach different? Obviously, you got cost savings, but how is it different?
When you say the approach now versus before,
right?
So I think clearly one of the differences is that we put the databases in the cloud. I mean, in the case of QuickBase, we've managed to completely undo the traditional model of how we used to deploy applications, and as a result, we can do it more iteratively, more quickly, and I think get a better result. I think the co-development process, as an example, was a clear distinction from the way we used to develop applications, and it's actually proved to be pretty effective because business users are more invested in the solution. And that, as opposed to sort of having it handed to them and say, well, gosh, this wasn't really what I had in mind. Can we go back to the drawing board? Which is one of the reasons why some of the projects in the past have failed. So
you closed the gap between, if I could rephrase, you closed the gap between the customers and the developers in a way that now the developers could cycle with customers?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Well, along that line, so you've done a pretty excellent job of driving together the DC government. What's kind of the plans to take these applications and give it to the citizenry of the DC District of Columbia?
Well, we're doing a lot on that front too. QuickBase was really, so far at least, has been intentionally an internal process improvement platform. But externally, we've done a lot, as you may have heard, with Apps for Democracy and some other application developments. And I think the evolution of Apps for Democracy is going to be more of a collaborative one. So previous iterations have been we request from the world applications based on our data feeds, for example, and then we get some back. In the future, what we'll be doing is doing things more collaboratively and actually have something that can be built and actually create more like a marketplace where these types of things can be built.
Now, the one last question, well, many other questions for you, but in this particular forum. So the D.C. citizenry is not as wealthy as most. So about 50% of it is under the poverty line. And I know that one of the things you said in your presentation is that you're trying to take the applications and make them accessible to the citizenry. Does the D.C. government have any thoughts, or do you have any particular thoughts about how you could lower the threshold for access to data when people don't have a personal computer at home?
It's a great question, and something that my agency in particular is very, very focused on. We've recently done a large computer donation program through the recreation centers in the district. We've done actually a fairly small number now, but it's going to be about 300 computers across the city. We have about 50 recreation centers. The broadband stimulus funds that we recently applied for is going to be one big way that we're going to be able to meet what is really a growing need. I mean, I personally believe that the more that government provides its services online, government has a responsibility to make sure that all of its citizens can access it. And so, and community technology is actually my background, so it's kind of fun to be able to apply the resources of government to that problem.
Tina, along those same lines, what could you point to from the Idea Factory that has delivered a real value to our air travelers, for example?
There's a number of ideas that I think have improved customer service. The family-friendly lanes were originally suggested on Idea Factory. There are also ideas about just improving workforce morale, which I think ultimately improves the travelers as they pass through. We have a new improved way of screening urns to improve security, to make sure that there's nothing inside the urns, a variety of other ideas.
What's interesting about this particular panel is we have two very public-facing solutions, and then we have three Enterprise 2.0 type solutions inside of the firewall. And I'd like to hear thoughts from the panel on the theme of this particular conference and the summit tomorrow is about government as a platform. So that works for a public-facing solution, but for the Enterprise 2.0 folks, what do you consider government as a platform to be when you're behind the firewall? We'll start with Emma.
I think government as a platform, when you're behind the firewall, to me, it's enabling the work that we do. How do we use Gov 2.0? How do we use these new tools to help us do our work better, more effectively, provide better value to the citizens? Because even if we're not interacting directly, when we build a spacecraft, we're solving a scientific problem that has some basis on people's lives. You know, why do we study solar weather? Well, because solar weather affects GPS, it affects cell phones, it affects things like that. And enabling our scientists to be more effective, to partner together better, to solve these kinds of problems, helps us solve, our problems back home.
I agree with Emma. Definitely there's improvement of the internal processes has helped. I think one of the ways Idea Factory is supporting government as a platform is in terms of expanding across the federal government. We're sharing our lessons learned in our 2.5 years of history of managing this program with the rest of DHS and with a lot of other federal agencies that have approached us. And we've been talking with GSA about making not only the software but a lot of the programmatic information available as well to other federal, local, and state entities who are interested in adopting a similar program.
Joan?
Well, for us, basically we're trying to unite 16 different agencies. They are geographically dispersed around the world. So in some sense, it's kind of a microcosm of what you're doing more broadly in the internet and across the government. So in our senses, we're trying to build that platform that will allow people from a variety of different agencies, and ultimately we hope to get down to lower levels and reach out to partners and others in the government. Again, we start small, we focused on the analytical environment, but ultimately we're trying to do our mission better by being able to reach not only to the members of the intelligence community, but also more broadly to our partners wherever they're inside or outside of the government.
I got an interesting tweet here that I'd like to talk through. So if you have some questions for the audience, by the way, we have about 10 minutes before we're going to take questions from the audience, but if you have some questions you'd like to ask the panel directly, please tweet them out and use the hashtag that the conference has given you. It's interesting that as we see how the Congress operates and allocates dollars and how we end up spending them in the IT structure, So agencies develop Spacebook, A-Space, which have similar functions, have different mission needs, but they have a common objective. What are some of the thoughts from folks about unifying services across the federal government? I'll get to states and locals in a second. About unifying services so that there's not an idea factory for TSA, but an idea factory for the rest of the government. Since I tailored that one, I'm going to target that one at you, Tina.
Well, and that's exactly what we're working towards, is having an idea factory for the Department of Homeland Security, and then eventually being able to share the software with other agencies, but then developing a community of practice so that those people can not only share ideas but can share best practices on actually implementing the program as well.
Okay, how about Emma and Joan? Any future A-Space, Spacebook merger?
I don't know, but I could say that with Intellipedia, Techipedia, and these others, where they're geared to a particular function, I see no reason why agencies couldn't just use those and not develop their own. When it gets to team collaboration, you still have to look at your users, what they do, what they need, and really try to target it. So maybe there's one size may not fit all, but several sizes may fit most.
Well, since basically what we're looking for is actually developing a service-oriented architecture, it's not just what we've actually delivered for A-Space now, which is mostly a social networking site with access to some other capabilities, but more broadly we're aiming for a SOA-based environment where you can really plug and play and bring in different capabilities, and when you add in additional ability to actually do what we call attribute-based access control so that we can form smaller groups and communities and also then expand to greater communities, and we can take a lot of the same capabilities and make them available at different networks, including the unclassified side. And in fact, Bridge, as I talked about, is that's both a pace to demonstrate technologies and see how they work within our environment, but because we need users within that environment to actually test those tools, it's also an area that we can use for outreach to reach out to expertise out in the private sector or foreign governments. So we're actually looking in those directions of finding how we can do what we're doing more broadly to reach out to the expertise and to involve who needs to be involved to do the national intelligence mission.
So let's talk about that just for a little bit. So that's quite a bit different for a culture that's very insular and protected. Reaching outside of that community, probably more foreign to other agencies. Why did you make that decision? Why is the intelligence community making the decision to reach outside of itself for good ideas?
Well, because there's expertise outside of the community there that we need to reach out to. That's, kind of coming out of 9/11 and the weapons of mass destruction issues that we know we need to be more broadly. It is a big change culturally, and it will probably take time to really become into impact, but we do think it's very important to do that outreach and that we'll get benefits from it.
I'm going to shoot this one at Peter. So Santa Cruz has had some great success. Do you guys see applying that model through the county, through the state? Do you see
actually the suggestion that received the most votes and the most feedback on the site was actually to coordinate our efforts with other jurisdictions. I think in general, the public, especially when the economy gets rough, they want to see their government be as efficient as possible. So actually it's funny that us on a very small scale are seeing the same feedback from our community that this panel is talking about. Share information, work with your colleagues and other agencies, and do the best to come up with the best solution.
Absolutely, and actually regionalism is something that we're focused on. This really is a region as much as it is 3 states or 2 states and a city-state, however you want to phrase it. I used to work for the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments as their CTO, and that's a regional body. It's been around for 50 years, helping the local communities around the D.C. area think as a region around issues like transportation and environment and also technology. So absolutely, I think for us to only think of ourselves as just DC is probably missing a bigger picture.
What do you see some of the challenges being there? You're a city government, you're not a state government. So what do you see as...
We're a state government too.
Oh, excuse me.
Thank you.
Deserves some applause.
That's right.
Thank you very much. But how do you see integrating with the state superstructure, which has a legislature, an executive body, a judicial body? How do you see that?
Well, it's always a challenge. I mean, they say there's no politics like local politics, and so you get 20 local governments within this region that are members of the Council of Governments. It's it's going to be hard to come up with any particular one answer. In addition, there's no regional authority. So at the end of the day, even if all the governments get together and they say, yes, this is a good idea, they've all got to go back and pass laws and actually make changes within their jurisdictions, which increases the degree of complexity. Nevertheless, I think that we've done a lot of good things in this region. The federal government is also recognizing this as a region, the national capital region, in fact, and there have been a number of federal programs that have funded that region as opposed to just funding Maryland, Virginia, or D.C., and I think that's been a positive step.
Outstanding. I got another tweeted question here. This one is for Joan, if I can get into a Twitter fall. It has been hard for A-Space to gather senior agency staff buy-in. How is the incentive structure changing to support senior staff buy-in?
Well, we're still working on that. Right now, much of the incentive actually comes from the benefits that analysts see working within A-Space, that they find value in it because they get information that they won't have, they make connections to people that they wouldn't have made otherwise, and their work gets better. It is a continual challenge, and we're looking at ways of actually having outreach, explaining to more of the senior policymakers and the senior managers to get them to get more buy-in and understand how they can use these capabilities to serve what their mission is. This is a really transformative change, and it takes time, and it also requires that you focus efforts on dealing with these kind of human factors that will affect adoption.
Another tweeted question that seems more tailored toward Tina because it covers both state and local and federal issues. It says, do panelists think it's easier to get these types of efforts pushed through on the state or local level or the federal level? I don't know if I can answer that question.
We're more focused, I guess, at the federal level. I am talking to a few states who are interested in it. I think it's everywhere has its challenges. Even at the federal level, we're working with folks from the White House and from GSA to try to, set Idea Factory up as a, application in this government app store for other folks to be able to access. And there's just a lot of hurdles even there to jump over, likely as I'm sure there are at the state and local level.
Does anyone else have insights on that, state versus local implementations?
I think it depends really on the type of problem you're trying to solve, because there's certain problems unique to states, unique to local governments, and if you can target them effectively, people will welcome that. But if you're just, hey, we're a solution in search of a problem, you're not going to get a lot of buy-in, and it's going to be like, pushing a noodle up a faucet. It's not going to happen.
There can also be,
The key, too, is actually having individuals that are willing to be innovative, willing to kind of go out on a limb to try something new, to tackle a problem that's a challenge and hard to, and can't be really accomplished. So it really depends on the people that are willing to push forward those kinds of innovations.
Right. Our site only took a week to put up with no budget, but it could not have happened without Obama's site. We actually used it as an example to actually get it through on the local level. So I think there's a push-pull dichotomy.
That's interesting, just tying those two ideas together. There's someone who took a risk at the White House. Of course, he kind of earned that. So he's at the White House. He's pushing, saying, I'm going to be open. And Joan, you're saying that people inside the enterprise also have to be willing to accept a degree of risk in order for good things to happen. Is that a leadership issue, or is that a grassroots issue? I think there's lots of debate on that topic. Emma's nodding her head vigorously.
Because leaders happen at every level. You need leadership at the grassroots, and you need leadership at the senior level. I think if you have a senior level pushed down, people still may not use it. In the same way, if leadership at the grassroots, you need a sponsor at the top. But if you don't have leadership throughout the chain, no change will happen. That's why I'm nodding. Leadership.
Outstanding. So now it's time for us to take questions from the audience. We've got some mic runners. Of course, I'm reading off tweets, so if people are sending tweets and too shy to talk to the mic, it's really hard to see people, so I see a hand there. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my question really for the panel.
If you don't mind telling us where you're from, that'd be great.
I'm from Austin, Texas.
And your name would be nice.
Steve Ginrich.
And your social security number?
I'm going to stop there, although
okay.
I do have really good protection on that.
We'll stop there.
No, Steve Ginrich from Austin, Texas. Good to be here. For all the panelists, each of you shared some lessons learned, and a lot of it had to do with working with your users. I heard a number of times failing fast, doing things quickly. I'd be curious from all of you if you could remark to some extent on what surprised you. I don't want to necessarily put you on the spot in terms of the thing or things that went bad, but a problem that you encountered. But maybe what surprised you or what was unexpected that occurred that was kind of maybe a good unexpected or bad, either one. I just would love to hear some comments from the experience you had. You've been working at it 3 months, 6 months, a year. In each of your case, what would you say?
For us, I think it was the uptake was a surprise. We thought it was a good idea, rolling out databases in the cloud and the co-development strategy and so forth. But the uptake, there was sort of a short point like this, and then it just went like this. And now we're finding more people are coming to us with requests than we ever expected. In addition, we've got a lot of support sort of at the top, back to the leadership issue. Our city administrator's office is almost every time they have one of these CapStat sessions, they've got another agency that needs another QuickBase application. So it's, we're getting more work as a result of that. And I think the more success we have, first of all, the more reuse we can have, because we can take some of these applications and reuse them elsewhere in government. But then also it just spreads the word, and we increase the usage.
Any other action? Go ahead, Joan.
The same from our perspective is we were, I think, surprised about how quickly ASpace caught on. We, in fact, were looking for a user base of about 1,000, and we hit that within under 2 months after going to launch. We were kind of taking it slow so that the viral aspect, I think, what it indicated is that there was really a crying need for this kind of capabilities, and that analysts really took to it when they had this secure environment that they can collaborate and share information with colleagues and not have to worry about exposing it to customers in its raw form.
I think, from TSA's perspective, I was surprised too, especially since our workforce is not in front of a checkpoint, is not in front of a computer. They're working at the checkpoints most of the day, and so in order to use Idea Factory, they have to come in to work early or stay late or use it on a break. So the fact that people are willing to spend their time, contributing back to the agency, I think is great. We also don't really give out any formal monetary awards. So the fact that when someone has an idea that we implement, we bring them into headquarters and have them work on implementing their idea. They basically get put to work for having a good idea, but they like it and they feel valued and for being recognized. So.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest surprise for me was the amount of fear among managers. I really thought we were past that. I thought I'd done the outreach and done the education, but there were really people afraid of social networking. And thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? And, in some cases they were falling all over themselves to think of the worst thing that could possibly happen, and that was a bit of a, setback in courage for me, but I thought, just hold their hands, it's going to be okay. We went through this with email. This is not as scary as they think. And you just have to hang in there.
Okay, I see a question back here, all the way in the back.
Yes, hi. My name is Bernice, and I'm from the District of Columbia.
All right.
My question is for the applications that are outward-based towards the citizens, how do you begin to tap into the different motivations of the various populations? Because you have, this 18 to 20-year-old, 25-year-old crowd who are into the Facebook, into the Twitter, but then you have grandma and their friends who listen to the radio every day and get all the information from the radio. How do you bridge that transition and still get them the information that they need while still trying to be innovative and on the cutting edge without losing people?
Well, yeah, I think that it's still necessary for any public engagement strategy to hit the traditional media, newspapers, radio, television, if possible. But the intent of ours was to actually hit the 24 to 40-year-old crowd that had not really made itself vocal in the decisions that will affect the community that they live in and the community that they'll raise their children in.
And for us, I think I agree with that. Although clearly, if you look at the trajectory, more services are being provided online from government. That not necessarily at the exclusion of inline services or traditional services, but I think that's just the way that more things are being done. So from our perspective, training is huge. We really need to reach out to different groups such as seniors and others, non-traditional internet users, and find a way to make sure that they are able to use the new services when they become available online. And again, going back to the broadband stimulus package, that actually provides us with a great opportunity to provide that training as well as access and equipment so that people not only have the ability, but they also have the tools necessary to take advantage of the applications once they're online.
Okay, we can take one more question. Oh, I guess we have no more questions.
One in front.
Yeah. We have 6 seconds left, so we have to stop now. I want to thank the panelists. Thank you very much. We've got a new set of folks coming up. Thank you very much.